Hello, welcome back to Behind the Faders, the live sound channel. In my last video, I talked about how much we enjoy mixing that punchy drum kit. And we talked about kick drum last time. So today, we're going to talk about the snare. Now, unfortunately, the snare has a lot more parameters around it that are not under our control. There's the room, there's the quality of the instrument and the tuning and the way it's being played. All these factors play a role in the kick drum as well, but far not as much. So if we have a small room, we hear the snare only directly from the stage. There's no way to even put it on the PA. The only little thing we can do in that case is take the snare channel off the master bus and then just send it to a reverb and bring the reverb up a little. That might make it a little better and make the snare be a little bit more connected to the rest of the mix. Now, as rooms get bigger, we have more and more control. Where this line is between no control and full control, or a lot of control, is not only defined by the room size. Of course, it also plays a role how dry the room is and how the drummer plays the snare drum. I remember being on tour with this ABBA cover band years ago, and their drummer had a great way to play the snare with a rim shot. That means as the tip of the stick hits the skin, hopefully in the center, the stick also hits the rim of the snare. That's the best snare sound you can get. And he was able to play that at a pretty low volume. So let's just assume we have a situation where all the factors play in our favor. How do we handle the snare? Let's start with the miking. A snare drum can be mic'd just from the top, or you can have snare top and snare bottom. Snare bottom becomes useful when you have like 100% of PA sound. Then it starts making sense. Can you get away with just snare top? Absolutely yes. Even in a stadium, you can get away with just snare top. What snare bottom gives you is, of course, you get a little bit more of the actual snare carpet sound, especially if you have a deeper snare, and you just have a few more options to create your sound. So it's useful, but it's not necessary. Mic placement. I like my snare top mic sitting like above the rim with a distance of 2 fingers pointing at the center of the snare. Snare bottom comes from straight underneath and it's pointed somewhere next to the snare carpet, not directly onto the carpet. Mic choice. Well, that's a tough one. You know, for me, it's still the good old SM57 all day long. But there are a gazillion different mics out there these days that are all suitable of capturing a snare drum. Some people like dynamic on the top, condenser for the bottom, or the other way around. I've seen people using 2 snare top mics and 1 snare bottom. Some people hate the SM57. Some people carry their own secret weapon mics with them. Let me put it this way. I think the SM57 is a safe place to start off, and from there you will have to find your own favorite mic. And some people use clip mics to avoid the hassle with the mic stands. And when it comes to the snare, I think it's useful to talk about mic stands for a minute. You see, the snare is probably the most difficult instrument on the entire stage to get mic'd. It's sitting in the center of this very crowded part of the drum kit with all these stands. So what some people end up doing is they take a large boom stand and place it outside of the drum kit, so in front of the cymbal stands, and then the boom reaches out all the way to the snare. Don't do that. That's so unstable. It will be out of place in no time. Here's a better way. First of all, when it comes to snare bottom, use a mic stand like this. A small round base with a very short stand, and then put the mic on it like pointing straight up, and it ends up exactly where it's supposed to be. That stand fits in between the legs of the snare stand perfectly, and it's not in the way of anything else. When it comes to snare top, uh, just don't wait until the entire drum kit is put together. You know, have an eye on the drummer or the drum tech while he's setting up, or ask him to give you a shout when he's finished with setting up the kick drum, the snare, and the hi-hat. And then put your mic stand roughly in place. And then he can carry on and put in all the cymbal stands and tom stands around it. And you might have to fiddle with it a little bit and twist it a little bit so the legs make space for the stands. But it works each and every time. Trust me, I've done it a million times. Now let's come to the mixing. First of all, let's talk about the gain, because the snare is a good example where if you have a good preamp, you can try to drive the gain a little bit hot. So overdrive the analog preamp just a little bit to get some harmonic distortion, so we get a little bit more texture and color. Then EQ-wise, we need a low cut. I usually set that around 150 hertz or so. And right above that, around 200, we give it a good boost. We boost the bottom end of the snare. Not too bright, but you have to play with the Q factor a little. And it might even be a little bit lower, a little bit higher, but around 200 hertz is the usual area where this bottom end sits. Then do we have to cut above that? Most of the time, actually not. The next thing that I always do, I boost around 1.6K. Very narrow or not too much, but I really like this mug sound that makes. And then, of course, be a little bit careful with bringing up the high end because of bleed from the hi-hat. You can try to find a place around maybe 5 to 6K and then high cut above that. But like I said, especially if you listen to the snare in solo at soundcheck, don't forget there's a hi-hat next to it. Compression, yes. I don't compress too much, 2-to-1 or 3-to-1 with a longer attack time, so that first transit cuts through. The release, not too short, otherwise you get this pumping effect, but not too long, so the compressor is back to zero when the next snare hit comes. As for effects, I use a plate reverb around 1.5 seconds with a roll off at like 5K or so. Doesn't need to get that high. And very little or no pre-delay. If the pre-delay is too long on a snare reverb, it sounds like a double hit every time. Also, overheads can play a big part in your snare sound. The overheads need to be positioned in a perfect triangle onto the snare, exactly same distance. And they also should be allowed to run down into the low mids. And now you just see what they give you. You should also try the phase reverse buttons on your overheads and see what works best. And that way they can even enhance the bottom end of the snare even more. And that's about it about the snare drum. Questions or comments in the comment section. A lot of questions or special set of questions. Consider booking yourself a coaching call. They start at 15 minutes. And if you haven't already, please subscribe to the channel. It's so important for me and it's just a click for you. That's it for today. I see you around.